And welcome everybody to Apocrypha Apocalypse. I'm Gary Machuda doing our chill stream for today, Monday. It's great to be with you today. As you know, chill streams, doing early morning programs here in the dojo. And so I had to keep my voice down. Hence the chill in the chill stream. It's great to have you all with me. Got a really cool lesson we're going through today. Speak about cool lessons. I was just watching Sam Shamoon, who's on right now. He's having a clinic on intercessory prayer, and specifically Origen, and I think Jerome a little bit. So it was tough to pull myself away from that to do this. In fact, I'm going to have to figure out how to schedule these live streams because I don't want to step on Sam's toes. And he mentioned at the beginning of his streams, he does Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, which is the same days I was staking out. So I don't know. I'm going to have to move it maybe to Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturdays to avoid being on with Sam. I don't know. I'll find my place somewhere in here. But that's why it's important, guys. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe, like, hit the bell, because I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I know I won't be able to do a chill stream tomorrow, so I don't know. I'll have to figure out something. Anyway, it's great to be with you today, and we've got a very interesting subject. All right, Divine Mercy is in the house. It is now a party, folks. Also, welcome aboard, all you guys. It's great to see you, Joey. Starting to get some regulars. This is awesome. And it's good to be with you. Today, we're going to be talking about the other books. And this one, it's going to probably be a short live stream. There's not a lot of material I want to go over, or I can go over, but we're going to talk about those books that are found in some Orthodox Bibles and maybe even considered canonical by some areas in Orthodoxy. So that's what our subject's going to be today. It's a little bit of a confusing subject, but I want to show you the Christian reception of these books and how they really do lack the pedigree to be considered fully canonical. Although what I love doing dives like this on is I'm always discovering new things. The issue of the canon is so complex. I'm always learning new things. And so it's just really cool stuff. So I'm not going to try to pronounce this name. This is interesting. I always get a kick out of the multiplicity of Esdrases and their unnecessary convoluted numbering. Yeah, I totally get that. Maccabees too. Some have 6 Maccabees. Yeah, I know. I totally get that. That's an awesome comment. And, Joe Yesto, man, thank you so much, my friend. Yeah, he gifted 5 memberships. In fact, hey, I love that picture. What was I going to say? Boy, Joey, your generosity totally threw me off track. Yeah, we were talking about nomenclature, how messy it is. I always learn new things. That's what I was talking about. Always learn new things in these deep dives. And that includes today, too. So we're going to talk about some of the more unusual books out there. I know we have some Orthodox who go on the chill stream, so this is for you. Please forgive me for any inaccuracies. That picture threw me off. It certainly did. And Divine Mercy, if you want to come up, James, love to have you on board. If you want to come up and give commentary as well, because Orthodoxy is not really my wheelhouse, but it is yours. And so any comments you can provide, I appreciate it. By the way, you guys, again, like, subscribe, hit the bell. And so I don't know. I'm going to have to figure out some way I can be online where I'm not stepping on my friends broadcasting at the same time, because there really is no competition. That's true. He's the man when it comes to gift. So, you know what? That means you have to be a friend of Joey, right? What a great incentive to be his friend. Awesome. All right, James. Yep, I'll look for you. And yeah, so this is what we're going to talk about. Books like Esdras, specifically either First Esdras or Third Esdras. I call it the Book of Ezarus. Davis Varus calls it Greek Ezra's, which is probably the best way to describe it. We're going to talk about Psalm 151, Prayer of Manasseh, 3rd and 4th Maccabees. I think that's it. There's a few others, like the Odes, but I don't think anybody considers the Odes canonical. For those who don't know what I'm talking about as far as the Odes, in the Greek translation of the Old Testament, known as the Septuagint, a pre-Christian Jewish translation of the scriptures into Greek, there is a book called the Odes, which is a collection of prayers taken from the Old and New Testament. So it's an Old Testament book, if you will, that contains New Testament material. It was written, or it was added to the Septuagint sometime in the 400s, 5th century. Like I said, I don't think anybody considers it canonical, although it's filled with canonical material. So I didn't include that. But I did include some of the other ones. And I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think that's about it. So when it comes to orthodoxy, like I said, my friends, I love my Orthodox brothers and sisters. They're awesome. Just rich tradition. Of course, we share the sacraments and so on. When it comes to the Apocrypha Apocalypse, I generally don't do anything that's like speaks against orthodoxy, at least not intentionally, because we're really brothers in the fight as well, because we're both share those 7 books that are rejected by Protestants as Apocrypha. So we're brothers in arms when it comes to those 7 Old Testament books. That's why I normally don't focus on where we differ, but it is important because that shows a lot on the bona fides of the 7 books as well. So, but the thing is, Orthodox is difficult to get your mind around because there's different orthodoxies for those who aren't familiar with Orthodox Church, because it's really Orthodox churches. There different heads with different views, including canon issues, or at least these extra book issues. So some Orthodox Church will accept certain things where others ones won't. And so it's a little difficult to understand. In fact, I'm just going to throw this first slide while we're waiting for James to come on stage. This I gleaned from Wikipedia. Okay, I really advise people, unless you're getting dates like when somebody was born or died, or something so general that you could find it in any source, and Wikipedia is just the quickest way to get it. That's the only time I recommend using Wikipedia, because generally it's not reliable, as you well know. But when it comes to this, I needed a quick reference to how the different orthodoxies accept books. So I basically gleaned this from Wikipedia, and I couldn't put all the information on it. But I want to show you this because when it comes to these extra books, orthodoxies aren't united. And some accept Psalm 151, for example, some don't. Some accept Prayer of Manasseh, some don't. Some accept First Esdras, some don't. Some accept Third Maccabees, some don't. Fourth Maccabees, same story. The other difficulty too is when it comes to Orthodox, I've been searching for this. And by the way, if there's any Orthodox out there that can point me in the right direction, I appreciate it. Because I've read Orthodox material on this. I've tried to run down primary sources the best I can, but I can't find any like strict definitions of the canon in Orthodox. material. In other words, I don't think there's like a single source that you could go to that has some sort of ecclesiastical authority, like a synod, that all Orthodox would sign on to, and it specifies exactly what is canonical and what isn't, except for one. And I'm going to treat that at the end of our presentation today. So I think that's going to be interesting to see how it pairs with these books. So again, just to reiterate, as I'm trying to do a little tap dance to give James a little bit of time to get up on mic, Catholics and Orthodox and Protestants, we all affirm proto-canonical books of the Old Testament. Catholics and Orthodox affirm what's Catholics commonly call the Deuterocanon, 7 Old Testament books that we both share. And these are fully canonical, inspired scriptures. But Orthodox also sometimes have other books that are sometimes found in their Bibles, depending on what area in Orthodoxy you're in, that are considered holy books. And that's really where the nebulous part is. What do you mean by holy books? Do you mean canonical books? Do you mean inspired books? Do you mean human writings that are kind of become sacrosanct because they're so old and so commonly used? You know, I don't know. Like, I can't find any clear definition on that. So, okay, let's go through this again. It's based on Wikipedia, so take that for what it is. I just wanted to map this out for you guys. Yeah, and they're interesting books for sure. Okay, Psalm 151. As you know, there's 150 canonical psalms. Psalm 151 is included sometimes as well. And good morning, James.
Good morning, brother. God bless you. How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm fine.
Yeah,
praise
excellent.
the Lord.
Yeah.
Just watching and learning.
Awesome. Yeah, I was watching Sam's show. He's doing Intercession of the Saints. He actually he wanted your advice on something early in the stream, but you
I
don't
think I
want
was
to know.
there. I answered it. Yeah.
Oh, you did? Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you heard his remarks in regards to you. Okay.
What
you guys
remarks? Sorry.
you know, the bag of milk remarks.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. You guys are always making shots across each other's bows.
Yeah. I got a few new ones for William. So
oh no.
I'll spare you because you want to let your family sleep. So
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. They appreciate it as well. Okay, so this is you mentioned this before, and I thought this was a good idea for a stream. Extra books found in Orthodox Bibles. And before you came on, I was just explaining that Orthodox don't really clearly define the status of some of these books. So it's hard to really pin it down. So basically, I'm punting to Wikipedia. So if you see something here that's not accurate, just let me know.
no, I mean there's no uniformity. So when you speak of extra books, we have to be really accurate as to what Orthodox church you're talking about, what region you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, but even within the regions, they're not very clear either. At least that's my impression.
Yeah, that's a different problem altogether that we won't tackle today. But
right. Yeah. So be that as it may, I just wanted to throw that caveat. So okay, we got 150 canonical psalms that Catholics, Orthodox accept. There's Psalm 151 that's accepted in Greek, Russian, Georgian, Armenian, Ethiopian, and Coptic churches, but not in Syriac and Oriental Orthodox. By the way, for those who may not know, there was actually 155 psalms altogether. I actually did a talk last summer, was it, at Franciscan University of Steubenville for the Applied Biblical Studies Conference on the psalms that were left out of the Bible. So Psalms 152 through 155 are found only in Syriac, and they're not considered canonical by anybody. But just want to throw that out because uh, I forgot who it was. Somebody made a comment. There's so many different Esdras and things like that. And it's like, yeah, there's actually quite a few extra canonical psalms as well. Then there's a very short, I think it's like 15 verses long section known as the Prayer of Manasseh. That's accepted by the Greeks. It's found in the Odes, and we just talked about the Odes, but not as a standalone text in Orthodox Bibles. It's also accepted in Russian, Georgian, and Ethiopian Orthodox churches, not in Armenian, Apostolic, Coptic, Syriac, or Oriental. Now, again, guys, I don't know how accurate this is. I just took this off Wikipedia, and there are some caveats here and there. And then there's the really confusing First Ezras, also known as Third Ezras, also known as the Book of Ezras, also known as Greek Ezras. What a fun book. And this, by the way, this is a book that a lot of Protestants have taken aim at because they insist that this is actually the book that the North African Councils affirmed. And our brother David Ezarus did a couple of videos on the Apocrypha Apocalypse where he goes in depth on that question. And I think basically it's beyond dispute that that's not true. It wasn't affirmed as canonical. But nevertheless, it is used in Greek, Russian, Georgian, Armenian or Apostolic, Ethiopian Orthodoxies. It's not accepted, and with a caveat with Greek, Armenian, Coptic, Syriac, and Oriental. I think that's a typo because I have Greek affirm and deny it. I think it's just affirmed, if I remember correctly. Known as 12th Ezra somewhere. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that nomenclature is pretty confusing. And then we're going to talk about Third Maccabees, as you know, deuterocanonical books, that First and Second Maccabees. Third Maccabees actually isn't really about the Maccabees. It's kind of a misnomer. And then Fourth Maccabees. But anyway, Third Maccabees accepted Greek, Russian, Georgian, Oriental Orthodoxies, not Armenian, Ethiopian, Coptic, or Syriac, although sometimes it is included in some of the manuscripts in Syriac Bible. And Fourth Maccabees only by the Georgian and Oriental, not Greek, although it's included as an appendix in the Greek Bible, Armenian, Ethiopian, Coptic, and Syriac. So, like James said, it's different strokes for different folks. Not everybody receives it, even within Orthodox communions. So, James, any thoughts on this?
Nope, none whatsoever, brother.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's great to have you as backup because this has not been a focus of my ministry over the years, so I'm pretty weak when it comes to Orthodox. This is probably the strongest area I'm with Orthodox, and even then it's weak. Okay, so let's talk about each book in turn. And by the way, for those who are just arriving, I know I have a few more people. Welcome aboard to our chill stream. We're talking about the extra books found in Orthodox Bibles and even communions. Our first book we just started is the Book of Esdras, also known as First Esdras, also known as Third Esdras, also known as Book of Esdras, also known as Greek Esdras. Greek Esdras is probably the best way to describe it because David Ezarus in his video, again, just go on Apocrypha Apocalypse and look it up. I think he makes a really good case that Esdras is really just like a Greek version of Ezra Nehemiah. And as you can tell here on this chart, this shows you the material, because what's strange about Greek Esdras is it's made up almost entirely of proto-canonical material. It draws extensively, as you can see from this chart, from Ezra, a little bit from Nehemiah, and also some from First Chronicles, or Second Chronicles, excuse me. So there's only a few sections where it has something that has no parallel within the proto-canonical scriptures. There's a small section at the beginning, in chapter 1, and then there is a rather extensive section about the 3 bodyguards in chapter 3. So that's the only unique material in this book. Otherwise, it's nothing but a compilation of proto-canonical material. So scholars see that those unique sections as being a kind of interpolation by the writer. So there's some theories as to what exactly is this book. Can it be considered a book, a standalone book, or is it considered another version of Ezra Nehemiah Chronicles? And over the years, scholars have been going back and forth on this issue. It could be that Greek Esdras is just a manuscript tradition that was just kept within the Septuagint and eventually just was like a standalone text. Or it could be an original composition, reordering stuff, adding some interpolated material, but drawing almost all from proto-canonical material. We don't really know the origin. I think David sides with the latter rather than the former. But we're concerned with Christian reception. Like, how did the early church receive this book? Did they receive it as a standalone book, or did they have it as like an alternative to the canonical books? That's what we're looking at. So the theory is, and I think this is the theory I'm going to go with, is that if you read Ezra and Nehemiah in the Septuagint, compare it to the Hebrew. By the way, just make things even more confusing when it comes to Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esdras and all the other stuff. In Hebrew, Ezra and Nehemiah is joined into one book. So you'll often see this just as a helpful tip. If you're reading scholarly things, you'll see Ezra-Nehemiah. That's to signify that the two books are actually united in one in the Hebrew text. They're separate sometimes in the Septuagint, sometimes they're joined together, just to make things more confusing. The Greek Ezra-Nehemiah is very literal when it comes to the Hebrew. In fact, it's difficult to read because it's so literalistic of a translation into Greek. However, Greek Esdras is incredibly eloquent Greek. Okay. And that's led scholars to, when they look at how the early church used Greek Esdras, to think that liturgically people gravitated to Greek Esdras against the Septuagint Ezra and Nehemiah because it was just hard to read. And Esdras covers pretty much the same material, but it's well written. And I think that's what accounts for its large usage in the early church, because a number of early church fathers used Esdras, but they seem to be using it as an alternative version of Ezra and Nehemiah. In other words, they considered it like a different translation of Ezra and Nehemiah, kind of like Theodotion's Mcabes or something like that. And this isn't just my theory. This comes from none other than Roger Beckwith. Now, if you're not familiar with Roger Beckwith, he is the man when it comes to Protestant apologetics on the canon. He wrote a book. Actually, this is the first edition. He wrote second edition, The Old Testament Canon and New Testament Church. And this is like the go-to source for people like James White and others, because he argues I don't know why he does, but he argues actually that the Old Testament canon was closed, fixed, and accepted like hundreds of years before Jesus. And it's amazing the twists and turns he has to do to come out with that. So he's arguing that the Protestant canon was actually there, rubber stamped, ready to go hundreds of years before Jesus. And it included only the proto-canonical books. Now, so Roger Beckwith is not a friend to deuterocanonical books, and but he is a scholar, and he's very much thought of by anti-Catholics. Okay, he writes this, and I think he actually is right on this point. It says, first Ezra's diverges widely from the Masoretic text of Ezra Nehemiah. It is regarded by many as an old Septuagint version of that book. So he continues, although first Esdras occurs in the Septuagint manuscripts, he continues, Josephus and the fathers of the first 4 centuries, in preference to the corresponding part of Esdras B, that is Ezra Nehemiah, the simplest explanation of this phenomenon is not that they regarded it as a different book, but that they regarded it as an alternative and fuller Greek translation of the same book. The question of the canon, therefore, is probably not involved. And I think he's right. I think ultimately, when it came to Greek Esdras, the early church fathers, and Josephus, by the way, uses it in Antiquities, they just thought of it as like an alternative Greek translation that was much more eloquent, easier to read, and a bit fuller, which would explain why they use sometimes those interpolated sections in Esdras. That's unique and not found in any proto-canonical book, which is not unusual for the early church fathers to do, because they always wanted to give the fullest expression of the faith. And so they looked at every nook and cranny for any additional information they could get that would help them understand the Bible better. Any thoughts on that, James?
I don't know why, like something similar to a targum came to mind, like a paraphrase or something easy to read.
Right. Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah, or maybe the thing is, it also reorders material too. Maybe rewritten scripture or something like that. All right. Jackson Hayes has a good question. Only just started watching. Is this similar to Deutero-Daniel? No, First Esdras is kind of like a. Here, I'll go back a slide. Maybe you missed that. It contains mostly proto-canonical material from Second Chronicles, Ezra and Nehemiah, and it has a little bit of original material. So it's not quite like Deutero-Daniel, but I can see where you're coming from, though. That makes sense. But it also has some unique material too. So okay, so the question of canonicity of Esdras, as far as the early church fathers' reception is concerned, is really not in play. That if Beckwith is right, and I think he is, they simply just use the First Esdras just as an alternative translation of these books. And he gives some backing for that. Now, this is really interesting. And like I said, James, I really appreciate that you wanted me to do this subject, because, going through the research and every time I get my notes, I'm always double checking my notes, make sure I got it right. I always discover new things. And actually, of all the extra books that are outside of the Catholic canon, that are found in some Orthodox communions, I think Psalm 151 might have the highest pedigree, the closest pedigree to being canonical. And that kind of surprised me, but let me explain why. Like, I don't believe it's canonical, but if there was a book that could be canonical, this might be it. But it's not. But anyway, I'll explain why. All right. So, as you know, by and large, there's 150 canonical psalms. There are some psalms that are beyond the 150 that are accepted in some Orthodox communions, and there's even more that's not. Okay. So Psalm 151 is canonical for the Eastern Orthodox, Ethiopian Orthodox, and Syriac traditions. Interesting enough, the Psalm 151 was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls in Qumran, but it wasn't found as such, though. It was actually um, two different psalms that were found in manuscripts. They're labeled 151A and B, although most of B is damaged. By the way, 151 is a very short psalm. I probably could have put it all on a slide. It's a little psalm about David and Goliath. So it's found in Qumran, although it's not in the same form as what you find it in Greek Bibles. It's divided as two parts, and with these fragments. By the way, if you want to check it out, it's 11Q PSA, 11Q Psalms. So that's interesting. So we know that there is a Hebrew foliage to, Hebrew original to this, because I believe these were in Hebrew. I could be wrong. Okay, now let's see what kind of information we can have as far as 151 and its canonicity. Now, 151 is found in all major biblical codices like Codex Sinaiticus, Codex Vaticanus, Codex Alexandrinus. And just FYI, Codex Sinaiticus is in disrepair. There's lots of folios missing. There's a few folios missing in Vaticanus, but Alexandrinus is kind of like the deluxe Bible. It's got everything in the kitchen sink in it, okay? A lot of material in the Alexandrinus. Now, what's interesting is in the Codex Sinaiticus, by the way, when we say codex, it's basically like the earliest complete book forms of a Bible. Okay, so the great codices, Vaticanus, Sinaiticus, Alexandrinus, those are the oldest Bibles that we have, bound Bibles. Sinaiticus, I think, is the oldest of the three. And it has Psalms of David, and then it gives the number 151. So you would think that whoever compiled the Sinaiticus Codex believed that Psalm 151 was canonical. However, and I don't know if you can see this here on I should have made this bigger. It numbers the Psalms, but when it comes to Psalm 151, there's no number. So all the Psalms are numbered up to 150, but Psalm 151 is not numbered. So there seems to be a little bit of a tension in Sinaiticus because it says 151, but it seems to exclude it by not numbering it. Okay. Now, the ambiguities, by the way, James, if you want to chime in or anything, just interrupt me. Just jump right in.
I'm listening, brother.
Okay. Yeah. The situation is a little bit more clear in the other text. For example, the Codex Vaticanus, the superscript reads, "This psalm is a genuine one of David, though supernumerary, that is outside the number, composed when he fought a single combat with Goliath." So it says that it's outside the number, stipulating that it's not part of the canonical Psalms. So that's explicit there in the manuscript. And another thing to factor into this calculation is that Psalm 151 also has the same superscript outside the number in the Old Latin and Jerome's Vulgate. The Old Latin, if you're not familiar with it, is a copy of the Septuagint made sometime early in the second Christian century, probably in North Africa, from Greek to Latin. And this was the text used by the early church fathers. So Old Latin is very important for the transmission of the Bible in the West, Latin-speaking West. Old Latin has the same superscript that it's outside the number, indicating it's not canonical. And Jerome's Vulgate, which comes in the 4th century onward, also has the same superscript in Latin. And the Peshitta, the Syriac Peshitta that I mentioned, also includes additional psalms, so it has 151 through 155. it includes Psalm 151 with that superscript outside the number. So if you can see the Syriac here, by the way, I don't know Syriac. I tried to learn Syriac. I gave up very quickly. Uh, although I think it'd be fun. I might have to go back to that project, try to learn Syriac. But anyway, so I give you the English translation here for the superscript. So even in the Syriac, it shows that it's outside the canonical number. Interesting thing too about the Peshitta is, it's actually placed in two different areas in the different manuscripts of the Peshitta. One is at the end of the canonical Psalter, and the other, 19b1, it's placed at the end of the prophetic books. So that's another indication that it wasn't considered canonical. If it's displaced from its normal order like that, that's a negative. Okay. So we have attestation in the codices that there is a distinction here that it's not part of the canonical Psalms. With Synecticus, like I said, it's weird, right? It seems to indicate it's not, yet it says 151. So I would say this tends to be negative, although not quite as negative as you probably think. Another text that's included with the Alexandrinus, remember that big deluxe Greek Septuagint I was talking about? The Alexandrinus also includes Athanasius's letter to Marcellinus on the interpretation of the Psalms. And by the way, guys, this is a great letter to read if you get a chance. I don't know, James, if you've ever read it, but he gives like practical advice that if something's happening in your life, read this psalm or read these psalms. It's a really cool breakdown of the Psalms as far as like applying it to your spiritual life. Have you ever read it?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. I
I've
thought it was
read
really
almost
cool.
everything I got my hands on when it comes to St. Athanasius.
That's awesome. You know, let me ask, can I pick your brain for a second on Athanasius?
Sure. I'll do my best.
It's floated around that he has, I think it's a commentary on the Psalms.
Mm-hmm.
Is that genuine or not? Do you know?
So a lot of the 5th century, early 5th century Athanasian works turned out to be pseudonymous. So if it's the authentic Athanasian work, then it wouldn't be. It depends on what era we draw it from. If there is another father who is using them, a lot of fathers famously accidentally used works that were pseudonymous. So those things have come to light in the last couple hundred years.
Yeah, because I've noticed that in older works, it's sometimes included as genuine, but newer works, it's labeled as pseudepigraphic. So
right. So especially Saint Athanasius, Saint Julius I, and Saint Gregory the Wonder Worker. A lot of that pseudonymous. A lot of those pseudonymous writings. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. Okay. Well, good. I wanted your opinion on that. Excellent. Okay. Got a couple of questions. Have not Synecticus and Vaticanus been shown and proved to be forgeries? No, they're authentic. I don't even understand how it could be a forgery. Like they don't pretend to be written by a specific person. But no, they're like very important in terms of textual criticism. Have you checked out their history or looked into their copies? I think that's in reference to what you just said. Here's from Tazar Ute. Is it available online? What specifically? The great codices are available online, if that's what you're talking about. If it's the letter to Marcellinus, yes, it is. But I love it. It's really cool. But anyway, at the end of the letter, and again, this is attached. Yes, it is available online. You just got to Google it, and you'll find it. It gives advice which psalms to read, and at the end of the letter, he says, "You want to sing to him? Use 96 and 98. If weak as you are, you yet are chosen for some position of authority among the brethren. You must not be puffed up as though you were superior to them, but rather glorify the Lord, who chose you, and sing Psalm 151, which is especially the Psalm of David." So here you have him recommending 151, and this is included in the Alexandrianus, that super deluxe ancient codex. And remember, the Alexandrianus seems to have accepted Psalm 151. Okay. Okay. Now, this is the part that surprised me when I was preparing for this.
So I don't mean to cut you off, but
Okay.
you had me look into that exposition on the Psalms while you were doing that.
Yeah.
G.C. Stead, Athanasius scholar, Brill author, says that there's no critical text on this, and it's generally understood as authentic. So,
really?
But deriving from Athanasius's works of maturity, like meaning the later Athanasian works.
Can you text me that or email me? You don't have to give me a clip, but if you can give me the reference, I'd really appreciate it.
Hold on, let me just, I'll get you the book.
If it's authentic, then...
That's what he's saying. He's saying it's found in the Minier, the collection of Jean-Jacques Minier.
Yeah, and he considers it authentic.
And the critical text is not yet provided for it. Mm-hmm. And it's generally understood as authentic.
Wow. That actually makes a big impact on canon, believe it or not. Because if memory serves me correctly, his commentary on the Psalms mentions positively Maccabees, which
I'll
find
send you
elsewhere.
what I have.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, if you run across anything on that issue, I'd appreciate it. Learning Syriac is worth learning. Finally, make an updated translation of Aristides' Apology, among other works. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. I don't know. I'm going to maybe give it a shot. It's actually pretty cool. The only thing is I'm always leery about learning languages that are adjacent to others, like Semitic languages, because I'm afraid it's going to mess me up because my brain's not that great. So I'm worried if if I learn one language and then there's another, say a Semitic language or a Romantic language, I'm always afraid that I'm going to get them mixed up and that I won't know any language. But Syriac is different, has a different script. I don't know. But anyway, okay, guys, so here's the part that surprised me about this. So and I'm going to try to do this for all the books. I want to show you conciliar attestation and also certain list of books. Now, I knew this, but I didn't realize the importance of it. First, the Mobson list, also known as the Cheltenham list, stipulates 151 Psalms of David. What's interesting about that is that's a Latin list, written roughly a little before Augustine. 151 Psalms in Latin. That's interesting. Because when we looked at the Old Latin, remember, and the Vulgate, it has that stipulation outside the number. Now, some people think the Mobson list might be Donatist. I'm not sure how they came up with that, but the Donatists accepted the same canon as the Orthodox Catholics, so that wouldn't be a problem. The other thing, too, so I went to the Pseudo Council of Laodicea, the spurious 80, what is it, is it the 85th Psalm? No, 60th Psalm, Canon 60. It stipulates 150 Psalms. This is going to be interesting later on because this kind of raises a conflict within Orthodoxy. Because there are some Orthodox that consider Laodicea as authoritative, even though the canon that has the books of Scripture is obviously spurious. I don't know how anybody considers it genuine, even though Mead and Gallagher think it is. No one else does. But anyway, it stipulates 150 Psalms. Then you have the Apostolic Canons or Constitutions. We'll talk about that in a second. That also stipulates 150 Psalms. When you get to the North African councils, okay, when you get to the North African councils, what you find is they're ambiguous. So the Decree of Damascus has Psalms, one book, but how many Psalms, right? Hippo, Regis, Carthage, the Psalter of David. Innocent I just says the Psalter. Carthage 17, 419, Psalter. Council of Florence, Psalms of David, right? It doesn't stipulate how many. When you get to Trent, it stipulates 150. So in terms of conciliar pronouncements, we just don't have the precision there, right? Maybe it wasn't an issue. Maybe they just assumed there's 150 and everybody knows it. Or is this ambiguous on purpose? Who knows, right? So that surprised me too, because I could have swore I saw one of the early decrees stipulate 150, but apparently not. So there you have it, guys. Now, the Mommsen list isn't conciliar. It has no ecclesiastical authority. Laodicea would in the East, and the Apostolic Constitutions does in the East, but there's problems with it. And we're going to talk about that in a second. Hey, David is in the house. David, we were talking about you earlier in the stream when we were talking about Greek Esdras. Hopefully you're feeling better, my friend. I know. Guys, keep David in your prayers. I should have mentioned this. They had to cancel their debate. He lost his voice and wasn't feeling well. So last I heard from you, David, you said you're feeling a little better. How are you feeling right now? Are you on the uptick? I hope you are. So please pray for David. David's awesome. And guys, again, if you want to learn about Greek Esdras, the best breakdown ever on the planet is David. He brings you up to date. He goes to primary sources. He brings all you up to date on secondary sources. And his conclusions are really solid. So Dave, if you could, in the chat room, if you wouldn't mind, just say whether you're feeling better or not. God willing, you are. We need you. We want to have that debate. Okay. I know you want a debate too. So, all right. Moving on, guys. So that's interesting with Psalm 151, right? It's like that actually has a decent pedigree. Prayer of Manasseh. Prayer of Manasseh is a short prayer. Actually, Martin Luther liked it. He included it amongst his Apocrypha. If it wasn't for Prayer of Manasseh, Luther's Apocrypha appendix would be identical to Trent's Deuterocanon. Is David the other personality of... I got to bring this up. Oops, wrong one. I hate that when it switches right when I click. Elijah Yassi. Yeah, it's funny. Their demeanor are very similar, and they look a little bit alike. Not much, but a little bit. I can see where you're doing that. All right. Yeah, no doubt. He should be part of the team. I'm starting to include him in thumbnails too, David. So are you feeling better, my friend? I hope you are, because I've been praying for you. Let's see here. Yes. So he sends his blessings. but he's not answering my question. Okay, let's talk about the Prayer of Manasseh. Like I said, Luther loved it. I don't know why. It's a nice little penitential prayer. It's not part of the Septuagint. It is included in one codex, and that is the Codex Alexandrinus. Again, that's the full deluxe version, and the full deluxe version has it as part of the 14 odes. Remember at the beginning of the chill stream, I said in the Septuagint, in Alexandrinus, there is a book called the Odes, which is a collection of prayers from the Old and New Testament. So you have New Testament and the Old. So it's more of like a liturgical book. I think it was probably there for functionality. So you don't have to flip through the leaves. You just go to Odes and you have your prayers there. But Prayer of Manasseh is there, but it's as part of the Odes, and the Odes aren't considered canonical. Even though it's all, as a book, it's not considered canonical. It's made up of canonical material. The earliest known copy of the Prayer of Manasseh comes from the 3rd century Didascalia, and it's found in appendix in the Latin Vulgate of the 9th century. Very, very late does it come into Latin. So the chances of that being authentic is nil, really. All right, let's talk 3rd Maccabees. 3rd Maccabees. 3rd Maccabees included in Greek and Slavic Orthodox. Actually, I did these slides and then I added that chart at the beginning. So let's go back to the beginning, shall we? Let's see, I'm sure I could just zip up here. So here's the chart. 3rd Maccabees accepted by Greek, Russian, Georgian, and Oriental, but not Armenian, Ethiopian, Coptic, and Syriac Orthodoxies. Now, if I can get back to the slide, which I'm not. There we go. Okay. Now, this book is found only in the Alexandrinus, which is, I don't put a lot of weight on that, because not all the Maccabees are found in all the great codices, but it is missing. It's omitted. This is much bigger. It's omitted in the Old Latin and the Vulgate. Later on, it was put into an appendix in the Vulgate, but that was pretty late. Okay, so 3rd Maccabees was not part of the Old Latin, which means it's not quoted by the Latin fathers. It is omitted by all personal biblical lists and all conciliar lists except for Apostolic Canon 85. So we don't find 3rd Maccabees referred anywhere except in the 85th canon of the Apostolic Canons or the Apostolic Constitutions, which is part of that, the larger work. Another interesting thing about 3rd Maccabees is according to Barbara Allan. Now, Barbara Allan and I believe her husband is part of the Nestle-Aland Greek critical text. That's maybe where you've heard Allan before. She compiled a huge appendix of references and allusions in the New Testament to Old Testament books. And there's not one that even comes to the level of allusion to 3rd Maccabees. It's totally absent in the New Testament. Now, is this important? Not really, right? Simply because a book's not cited doesn't really mean anything. It's just silence. Silence always cuts both ways. Because maybe they just didn't find any opportunity to quote 3rd Maccabees. But it's absent. And there's not even allusions found. So, be that as it may. So we have some big problems with 3rd Maccabees as far as its Christian reception. Like I said, it's not in the Latin. It's not in the Eastern Church, or excuse me, the Western Church. It is included in the Apostolic Constitutions or canons, But guys, there's a big problem with the Apostolic Canon Constitutions. Okay, so here is the clip of the list. As you can see highlighted, you have 3 of Maccabees. But the problem with this is it's a forgery, and an intentional forgery. The Apostolic Constitutions presents itself as being written by Pope St. Clement of Rome in the 1st century, and it wasn't, okay? And so when it presents some material like the canon list, it's got to be taken with more than 1 grain of salt, because there's all sorts of weird inconsistencies because of its being a forgery. For example, that's the bottom where I highlighted. Notice it lists the New Testament canon, 1 of James, 1 of Jude, 2 epistles of Clement. So it has 1st and 2nd Clement as part of the New Testament, and the constitutions and 8 books addressed to you bishops through me, Clement, which are not to be divulged to all because of the secret things in them. So it includes the constitutions itself as part of the New Testament, but it's like a secret book of the New Testament. That should raise more than 1 red flag, right? And then it finishes with the Acts of Us Apostles. So the author, and by the way, doesn't go back to Clement. It's got some material from later councils. So it's probably 3rd century composition, but it's clearly a forgery. And the forgery actually messes with the New Testament canon. And if that's true with the New Testament canon, what exactly is the Old Testament canon, right? So it's got to be taken with more than a grain of salt. James, do you have any info you'd like to bring to bear on the Apostolic Constitution?
Nope. No watching, brother. And I knew it was a Clementine forgery.
Yeah, and a real bad one too. But yeah, when it comes to the canon list in there, that's, what do you do with that? Is this authentic? What's it representing? I don't know. But it's the only list out there that has 3rd Maccabees, which shows you how poor of reception 3rd Maccabees received. Now, this one's from the Companion to the Septuagint, T&T Clark. Says there are occasional allusions to the book in a few Christian authors, exclusively to be found in the eastern half of the empire. The only ancient translations of the book, Syriac and Armenian, were likewise products of Eastern Christianity. Then it continues, 3 Maccabees was never translated into Latin, and there is no trace of influence in the western half of the empire or later Western art and literature. Then it concludes, there is no evidence at all that the book was read by Jews after the 2nd century CE. Then that's problematic, because if you have 1/2 of Christianity having no clue about this book, and then only minimal evidence in Eastern Christianity, you can write it off as being extremely weak attestation of reception. In fact, the fact that it's not included in any canonical list outside of the spurious pseudo-Clementine apostolic canons, there's nothing. So that's probably the worst of the extra books in terms of pedigree. And then we come to our last book of the chill stream, which is 4th Maccabees. Yes, 4th Maccabees. It's not in the Old Latin translation, which is important because, like I said, that's basically the translation for the early church fathers. No, actually, it's 4:30 my time if you're addressing that to me. So that's important. The oldest copy we have of 4th Maccabees, I think in the West, is the adaptation of the Passio of the Maccabean saints in the 4th century, which is relatively late. New Testament allusions are generic and difficult to argue for dependency. Now, that's my own personal note. I've looked up and studied the purported allusions to 4th Maccabees in the New Testament. There is some texts that do appear to be the same as 4th Maccabees. The problem is that some of them are kind of generic. For example, the strongest one is a doxology. And doxologies are basically blessings, very short blessings. And they have a general form about them. So I'm not sure whether you could really argue for dependency, with these allusions. So, what can I say? What can I say? In my opinion, it's there, but I don't know if you could say the New Testament is definitely drawing from 4th Maccabees on those things. Awesome. 6:30 p.m. That's good to know. Thank you, Jackson, for letting me know. Yeah, by the way, guys, I'm thinking of switching to chill streams just so I can avoid coming in conflict with my brother Sam. So I might move them to Tuesday, Thursdays, Saturdays. But I'll keep you posted. So when I do, so you definitely got to subscribe or hit the bell so that you know whether a chill stream's coming up. Because the next chill stream's going to be cool. I'm going to dive into what I believe happened with the rabbinic Bible, how that came about. So we're going to dive into rabbinic stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. So you don't want to miss the next chill stream. I probably will do it Wednesday because by Wednesday I'll figure out whether I'm going to switch my days or not. So I'll definitely be here next Wednesday, 3:30 Eastern time, about an hour before the present time, wherever you're living around the world. You can't miss that one. That one is how I interpret the whole canon issue and the early church fathers and the list and everything. So, important chill stream. Okay, now back to 4th Maccabees. Another issue with 4th Maccabees is dating. And what's interesting, Eusebius and Jerome actually attributed 4th Maccabees to Josephus. They thought Josephus wrote 4th Maccabees, which is interesting because 4th Maccabees is really a retelling of the martyrdom of the Maccabees found in 2nd Maccabees 6:7. Josephus didn't use 2nd Maccabees, or he used it sparingly. In fact, I'm not sure if he used it at all, but it seems like he may have. So that's an interesting thing. But what that tells me, though, is that these early church fathers believed that 4th Maccabees was relatively late because the Jewish historian Josephus flourished around 100 AD. So if Jerome and Eusebius thought 4th Maccabees was written by Josephus, it would suggest that they believe this book is post-Christian. And that's interesting because when you look at modern critics, now remember, dating text is just educated guesses. And sometimes those educated guesses are well-founded, and sometimes they're just spitballing. So you should always give them more than one grain of salt whenever they say such and such was composed during this time. But the TNT Card Companion that we quoted earlier dates 4th Maccabees from AD 18 to 72. And also De Silva, who's a Protestant scholar who specializes in deuterocanonical stuff. De Silva actually says that is early part of the 1st century AD. To me, this argues against 4th Maccabees being canonical. And the reason I say that is because I believe the canon came to us from Jesus through his inspired apostles. Now, I'm not sure if it's dominical or apostolic. Maybe I'm pretty sure Jesus transmitted the canon either directly or indirectly to the apostles. That just seems to make a lot of sense. In fact, it doesn't make sense if it didn't happen. Or maybe the apostles had some sort of inspiration, but I think it's probably dominical. But if that's the case, then that means the books that were on hand for Jesus is kind of the end date for the canon. And this would suggest that fourth Maccabees is after that end date. So that's my theory. Sticking to it, unless I have some counter evidence, which I'm definitely open to. But it seems to be a late composition and maybe too late to be considered canonical Old Testament text. Yeah, I have a soothing, thank you. Justified Janice says, yeah, I got a soothing voice. That's because I'm trying not to wake up my family, because I started the stream at 3:30 a.m. and I actually have my daughter sleeping in the next room, but she's a pretty sound sleeper. So,
yeah. How was your Father's Day?
That was good. How was yours?
Good. I'm pretty good. I'm not a father.
Oh, you're not? Okay, I'm
no,
sorry.
But the fathers around me are very fatherly. I'll say that.
Okay. Well, you have a very patriarchal voice. So
who, myself?
Yeah.
Yeah. You should see how I troll people. You would instantly think I'm a child.
Okay. Yeah. No, it was fine. It was typical
Praise
Father's
God.
Day. Yeah.
Praise
I think
God.
good weather. Got some barbecue. It's all good. Life is good. Thanks be to God.
Praise the Lord. Yeah.
Yeah. So so that's fourth Maccabees. Now, when it comes to the Maccabees, let's look at some list. Codex Claromontanus. This is a 4th century Bible with a table of contents. It lists Maccabees 1st, 2nd, and 4th. And I don't know if I'll do a chill stream about this, but I think there's indication, and this is just me, that it indicates that the 4th is spurious or not canonical or extra biblical. So it's my theory. I think actually the text actually speaks against 4th Maccabees. Mommsen Catalog lists Maccabees 2 books, Decree of Damascus, Maccabees 2 books, Hippo Regius, Carthage 3, 2 books, Innocent, the first, 2 books, Florence, 2 books, Council of Trent, 2 books, 1st and 2nd. Just in case you missed it, it actually says 1st and 2nd. So Gary and James show should change the chill stream to include James. Yeah, well, I love having. He's like a walking encyclopedia, so it's great to have him on board to back me up. By the way, guys, support our brother James, Divine Mercy Apologetics. If you haven't, go over there, subscribe, like, hit the bell, tell your friends. Let's blow up his channel. He's got some really great in-depth stuff. That's why whenever I see him in the chat room, I beg him to come on board because I love his input because he knows his stuff and I learn a lot from him. And I've watched, I've binge watched his stuff. So I'm kind of a fan. I was a fanboy of James. So although James, the mask.
I learned from you, man. Trust me, I learned from you. That's a very great compliment that I don't deserve. Well,
thank you. No, you do. You do. The mask, though, it's hard to make thumbnails for mask figures, but I'm working on it. I got a couple ideas. Okay, now, James, you probably can help fill in some stuff on this. So
this is like luckily, you're such a nice guy. You don't know that what you're showing right now can cause a war.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I don't know, but I have a feeling. Yes, it is. Just in my research on this, I got that impression. So, but I need to show this because this is a data point, right? And I know there's a wide variety of opinions on I saw.
Yeah,
I call them so.
we'll call them opinions just to be nice. But go
Yeah,
ahead.
we'll say these are opinions, and there's many different opinions, right? Because that's why I said at the beginning of the chill stream, if you weren't here at the beginning, when it comes to orthodoxy, I'm still trying to learn because it seems very nebulous exactly what status these books have and when they spoke on these books. Okay, so I'm going to call him Cyril Luker. Okay, because that's what I read some old books with him. That's what they called him. They didn't call him by his actual name. So Cyril's aim. This is from the Encyclopedia Britannica. So this isn't me. This is standard work out there. And, aimed is to reform the Eastern Orthodox Church along Calvinistic lines. And to this end, he sent many young Greek theologians to universities in Switzerland, Northern Netherlands, and England. In 1629, he published his famous Confessio, Calvinistic doctrine, but as far as possible accommodated to the language and creeds of the Orthodox Church. Handwriting analysis between the correspondence of Cyril Lukerus, in which he confirmed his authorship of the Confessio, and the autograph of the Confessio shows that Cyril Lukerus wrote the Confessio. However, since a majority of Greek and Russian Orthodox believe it to be forgery, that must be a typo. They canonized Cyril. So there you go. Yeah.
So, yeah, you'll allow me to talk on this a little.
Please do. I was hoping you would.
Right. So, Cyril Lucar or Lucarius, Patriarch of Alexandria, nephew of the former Patriarch of Alexandria, elevated to Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople, had a cohort by the name of Metaxius. He and Metaxius, this is off memory, Gary, forgive me. He and Metaxius approached the English and another ambassador in that time it was Turkish overrun Constantinople. And they actually petitioned for a printing press. And they actually got a printing press. And the documents you cannot claim they're forged. I'm sorry to break it to everyone. They're not forged. Because we have the correspondence that Cyril Lucarius had with certain European non-apostolics. That's all I'm going to say. Because I'm not trying to cause a war here. And that confession confirms, ironically, since we're talking about scripture, that confession confirms sola scriptura. So it confirms a lot of other things, by the way. I don't want to get into that. But it confirms a lot of other things that were generally understood as heterodox. So come 1642, a council was convened. It's called the Council of Jassy or Yassy, Jassy. And he had died, Cyril Lucarius had died about 2 weeks before this council. And at this council, they level anathema after anathema on him. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Just so you know, interestingly enough, Gary, there was someone in their church called Peter Movila or Movila. Okay.
Okay.
He provided a catechism to rehabilitate the Eastern Church. Just so let you guys know, Cyril was a fan of John Calvin. That's all I'm going to say. He was a big fan of John Calvin. So they rehabilitated the church for 30 years using Peter Movila's catechism. At the Council of 1672, Pan-Orthodox Council of Jerusalem, Synod of Bethlehem, they ratified Dositius's confession, and with that ratification, they degrade Peter Mohila's catechism. They degrade it, they minimize it, and they place the confession above the catechism, right? And the reason for degrading the catechism, and I kid you not, Gary, is, quote, it was too Roman. So the Roman, quote, Roman catechism rehabilitated your church. Thank you very much.
I didn't know. That makes a lot of sense. I kept running into those names.
If you need help with this stuff,
helpful.
I know this stuff. This is like my world, right? But
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that. That actually makes a lot of sense, because I had all the pieces. I just didn't understand what was going on and how they related to each other. So your explanation is fantastic. Yeah, so that's why I'm so blessed that you're on this stream. I really am. And again, I'm sitting at your feet. Okay, thank you so much. So yeah, chime in. So you published in Geneva 1629 in Latin, published in Greek 1633. Synod at Constantinople condemned the confession 1638 to 1641. I'm just getting this from standard sources. There's a Synod of Jassy that you mentioned, 1642, condemned the confession. Then you have the Synod of Jerusalem, 1672. Interesting that they downgraded the catechism. That's very interesting.
Right, but condemned the confession is an understatement. They leveled more anathemas on him than the Fifth Ecumenical Council leveled on Origen. It was really ugly.
Wow.
And then the one that occurs in 1672 is considered for them pan-orthodoxal.
Yes.
Which means it's binding. Well, the anathemas at Jassy are ratified at 1672. Right? So
okay. Interesting.
It's a lot more than what you're putting there.
Yeah.
But that's because you're just going through it in a summarized manner, right? So.
Oh, you're very kind. It's really, I'm more ignorant than anything. So, now I read that he died a martyr, and I heard that there's some dispute as to whether he truly was a martyr. Do you know anything about that?
I think there's been a push to rehabilitate his name because there was, man, you're going to get me into a war.
Okay. Then that's fine.
No, I'll just say it. I don't care. There was a particular church that venerates him now as a saint, which goes directly against the anathemas that is pan-orthodoxal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll let you guys conclude the rest in your minds.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I did open a can of worms, but I have to because I want to use the confession. So you have the Confession of Dositheus in chapter 7 of the Acts and Decrees of Synod of Jerusalem, March 16th, 1672. As James mentioned, it's about, it is a pan-Orthodox synod because all the patriarchs signed on to it. Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, Jerusalem, and Moscow. So if there is an authoritative decree on the canon in terms of the Orthodoxies, this would be it in my books. And again, like I said, I don't really know a lot about Orthodox, so I try not to do that. And like I said, with this, by the way, the Apocrypha Apocalypse, we consider Orthodox our brothers and sisters, and we both are defending the Deuterocanon against Protestants. So most of our material is focused on that. But this is important too. So that's why we're addressing it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the decree in the Synod of Jerusalem. And we'll read from it. It says, the following rule of the Catholic Church we call sacred scripture, all those which Cyril Lucer collected from the Synod of Laodicea and enumerated, adding thereto those that he foolishly and ignorantly, or rather maliciously called Apocrypha. So a couple things I want to comment on this.
Gary, I swear, if I get into a war, man, you better fight right next to me, man.
Unfortunately, my gun doesn't have bullets, James.
Okay. Oh, tell me
go-
why he called them. One question for you, brother. Why did Cyril Lucar call them Apocrypha, in your opinion?
Well, it's obviously from Protestants. I mean, it can't be from anything else. He wouldn't be following Jerome, would he? I mean, yeah.
I just want to mention, when we say Cyril Lucar, we're speaking of the very pinnacle of that church. He's the ecumenical patriarch.
Yeah.
I just want to put that out there. That these quotes cause wars.
Oh, I know.
Gary, they're not the ones you're showing on screen right now. These quotes are, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, but let's focus on the contents, though. Now, Cyril Lucar, the Confessio, okay, the Confessio stipulates that the books listed in the Synod of Laodicea. So maybe, James, I'm going to get us in more trouble, okay? So he stipulates that those books that are listed at Laodicea are authentic, but the things that aren't in it, like the Deuterocanon, are Apocrypha. Okay, so that's what Cyril Lucar and the Confessio says. Now, as we mentioned before, the Synod of Laodicea is pseudonymous, or not pseudonymous. It's a false writing. It is a later list that was appended to Laodicea. It was not authentic to Laodicea. It's very clear from manuscript evidence. This is a late addition. Okay. So the fact that he's relying on this text is he's relying on a spurious text. Okay. It's not from Laodicea. It doesn't have that authority. That's problem number one. Problem number two is, as we mentioned earlier, Pseudo-Laodicea stipulated there's only 150 Psalms, not 151. So for Orthodox who accept 151, Cyril Lucar and Pseudo-Laodicea actually argues against you. Now, what's weird here is this Pan-Orthodox Synod affirms the list at Laodicea. So the Synod of Jerusalem affirms a 150 Psalm Psalter, not 151. So I didn't realize this until I was researching these things, which, James, that's why I'm so glad you asked for this, right? Because I'm always learning.
I didn't ask for this, Gary.
So now you're even more trouble.
Don't put this on me, man.
It's all James' fault. It's all James. Those pesky Canadians are causing all this trouble.
You don't even know those 6 lines that you have there in a quote are so devastating. The ratification of pseudonymous Synod of Laodicea, and nonetheless you've ratified it, and Laodicea has 150 in their Psalter, and now you're using 151. Yet this is ratified Pan-Orthodox. I don't even know how to reconcile any of this. Gary, I can't believe you brought this up. For the record, I'm saying I can't believe you brought. For the record, please. All right. This is this is a problem. Actually, this is not small. This is a pretty big problem.
Yeah. So guys, hey, if there's any Orthodox there that I'm missing something, I'd love to hear you, because I'm just telling it like it is. I have no skins in the game. I mean, if you want 151 Psalms, actually what I said was, as far as canonical pedigree, that's probably the closest you got. So I'm all ears, but yeah, that's problematic. Okay, so now the Synod appends its approval of the Deuterocanon, to wit, Wisdom of Solomon, Judith Tobit, History of the Dragon, History of Susanna, the Maccabees, and the Wisdom of Sirach. Notice it doesn't tell how many books of Maccabees. So this Pan-Orthodox Synod doesn't stipulate 2, 3, or 4. Father Christian Kappas believes that they are actually affirming the North African councils because that was adopted as part of the North African Code. It was tacitly accepted by ecumenical councils, East and West. And so most likely it's just 2 Maccabees, but in all fairness, Synod of Jerusalem doesn't stipulate how many, which is kind of strange because remember back when we were looking at those lists for Maccabees, almost all of them stipulate 2. Okay, so this is unusual in that it doesn't stipulate how many books of Maccabees. But it affirms the Deuterocanon, so this is thanks be to God for that. And,
it'd be interesting
yeah.
interesting to look at Peter Movila's catechism, because I imagine it would include a canon list, especially if this council aims to ratify Dosithius's confession over Peter Movila's catechism. So I would like to see if perhaps something is being imported. Maybe Peter Movila's canon list within a catechism would be imported. We'll see, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I did look at it. I don't remember if it does have that, but I wasn't sure what I was looking at, so I kind of gave up on it. But now that I know what I'm looking at, maybe I'll get another look. And then it continues, it says, for we judge these also to be with the other genuine books of divine scripture, genuine parts of scripture, for ancient custom, or rather the Catholic Church, which has delivered us as genuine, the sacred gospels and the other books of scripture has undoubtedly delivered these also as parts of scripture, and the denial of these is the rejection of those. See, that's maybe a hint that they're following the North African councils because they gave both Old and New Testament list. Laodicea, by the way, omitted Revelation, the spurious canon. But so here,
keep digging that hole, Gary. Keep going there.
It's all James' fault. Just remember that, folks. I'm a blind man wandering through a minefield, apparently. Yeah. So this is, we would affirm that. But I think maybe it's the North African Code, just because it mentioned New Testament conciliar. And if perhaps it seems that not always have all been by all reckoned with the others, yet nevertheless, these also have been counted and reckoned with the rest of Scripture, as well as the synods, as by how many of the most ancient and eminent theologians of the Catholic Church, all of which we also judge to be canonical books and confess them to be sacred scripture. So they're canonical, just those books. But notice what's omitted from this. We don't see Ezarus. We don't see 3rd, 4th Maccabees, although it may be included with the Maccabees. We don't see Prayer of Manasseh or the Odes. We don't see, am I missing anything? It could be there, but it would have to be there included under the titles. So it essentially affirms the same thing that was at Trent. Essentially the same canon, except for depending on the number of Maccabees. And it's pretty firm too. It's canonical, it's inspired, it's genuine. I think this last paragraph is interesting because it may explain some other statements within Orthodoxy. It seems that the Orthodox, when they approach canons, and James, maybe I'd like your impression on this, when it approaches canons and difficulties within canons, it seems to be, it tries to affirm both. So just like Laodicea has a shorter canon and the North African councils have a longer canon, they accept the longer canon because that would also include Laodicea. So instead of pitting the two against each other as two separate and contradictory things, it tries to harmonize both by accepting both. That's my impression.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Better too much than too little.
Yeah, exactly. Which if that's true, then I think that kind of explains why within orthodoxies you have this kind of nebulous, ill-defined larger group of writings as opposed to a sharper core canonical writings, because it's kind of like these other things are added. So as to avoid dismissing the pseudo-Clementine Apostolic Constitution, they accept third Maccabees, right? Because they don't want to exclude it, but they'll just add it to the mix. And then with Laodicea, they add North African councils. So you add that to the mix. And then it just grows and grows. And it gets nebulous as you get bigger and bigger. But hey, that's what I see it, but it could change, guys. Like I said, this isn't really a field study for me. James has been living, breathing this field, but he hasn't. Now, forgive me if I don't want to belittle you, but you said that this hasn't really been a focus of your study, the canon. So,
yeah, no,
yeah,
I don't. I leave it to you guys. This is a topic that requires proper nuance. Now, if I talk about a council, for instance, you saw what I could do.
Oh,
I didn't mean to say what you were going to bring up in your next slide, because I know the history that underpins all these, events.
Yeah.
With canon, it's very different because you constantly have to remember that every regium is going to have like a perceived pedigree, right?
Right.
So you guys are so good at harmonizing that and making it make sense. I'm just not going to touch it. I'll stay in my lane and learn from you guys.
Yeah. No, hey, feelings mutual. In fact, I would love to get Father Christian Kappas on, maybe yourself, bring the whole team on board and go through this with Cyril Looker, because he has a lot of information on him and you have a lot of information. And this is an area that you find in books on the canon of Scripture always, because they try to say the Orthodox Church agrees with the Protestants, and they'll bring him up. And then they'll have a little footnote about the Synod of Jerusalem, or things like that. And then they'll go straight from that to the Russian Orthodox Church, because that also was influenced by Calvinism. In terms of
some
canon.
catechisms in the Russian Orthodox hold to 66 books.
Yeah.
So you guys can figure out the rest. I don't know I don't even know how you can come to that conclusion, but
yeah. That's that's a knotty ball to untwine, is Russian Orthodoxy. But anyway, so that's it. That's the last slide, guys. That's how I see it. So hopefully, whenever you encounter these books, at least you know the pedigree and Christian reception of them. And I think that's about it. I thought, let's see, was Jackson Hayes has to say, I thought the Russians almost became Lutheran, or maybe I'm mistaken with Calvinist. I might be mistaken on that. I know that they definitely had Protestant influence, but
so
I was thinking Calvinist. Maybe I'm wrong.
there is, whatever I'll say. There is extant evidence between Lucaris and particular reformers, where he says he aims to disprove Roman papalism and Eastern superstition. I'm not kidding. That's what he said. And this is the Ecumenical Patriarch, by the way.
Yeah.
And then he says, we need to go back to the faith. I'm paraphrasing. And then he ends the letter with like an exhortation to the most excellent John Calvin. I'm not kidding. So
Yeah.
thank you for getting me into a war, Gary. Thank you so much.
Hey, my pleasure. I'm sorry about that, but you wanted the topic, and that's my take on the topic. And
That's not what I wanted. So,
well, I had to do Synod of Jerusalem just because that's the only thing that I know of within Orthodoxy that has some sort of ecclesiastical backing. Let me ask you a question. Synod of Jerusalem,
please don't.
How is
do
that viewed by different Orthodoxies today? Do they see it as pan-Orthodox?
Which one?
The Synod of Jerusalem.
The one over here, 1672?
Yes.
Yeah. It's officially called the Pan-Orthodox Synod of Jerusalem, or Council of Jerusalem Synod of Bethlehem.
Okay.
It's pan-orthodoxal. It's interesting. As you'll find a lot of people rejecting it now, which they're not allowed to, but they do. So
okay, yeah. So 720 says, "Thank Gary. Would like to hear more specifically about what James was alluding to. Where can I find more with Sarah Luker and that type of stuff?"
I'm definitely not divulging that right here. I'll tell you why. Because some people don't look into things for the sake of looking into things. Some people, I'm not saying that about the gentleman who asked. I'm talking in general. Some people aim to hurt other Christians. Even I, that know these arguments, would never use these arguments. So I don't want to ever weaponize the haters. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because they're still our brothers. You know?
Yeah.
And we still love our brothers. So
right.
It's not because you asked, but it's because I would never weaponize the haters. So
right. Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah. But any standard work, I cited this Encyclopedia Britannica. I mean, the information's out there. So yeah. So I'm speaking from a point of ignorance, so I can't really say. But anyway, James, well, I hope you enjoyed it. I don't have any more thumbnails that I could share with you, but I do have a few ideas. And like David said, you're an honorary member of our team, so I got to figure out some way to include you in the thumbs.
I made one of Sam and William as Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah, I saw that one. That was good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That one no one's going to use because it's too good. It's really good. I think you'll wake up half your state, not just your family, if you put that one.
I saw on one of the feeds, I think. I don't know how I saw it, but no, was it with William being Garfunkel?
Yeah. Who said it? Did I send it to you?
I don't know where I saw it, or maybe I missed. I don't know. I saw two
not
figures.
Near my laptop, so I can't show you any unless you want me to email them to you. And you can. Here, let me email one to you.
Okay. Yeah, we could do that because it seems like with the live streams, the chill streams, excuse me, we always do something with thumbnails at the end. We're just having so much fun. Let's see. So, any questions?
Did you show them the one of the Godfather with the three of you?
Yes. Wait, hold on a second. Did I? I could show them that one. Hold on a second. I've got to get back to StreamYard. Yeah, I could show that one. That was a good one. Thumbnails. In fact, I made it into a thumbnail. All right, let's see if I can find it. They're all good. And I noticed that Sam used one of yours today.
I sent you one right now as well, if you see it. It's kind of funny.
Okay. Okay, let me look really quick. So, guys, chat room, if you have any, as I'm getting this ready, put any questions because we're going to be closing. Yep, that's the one I saw. I don't know where I saw it from.
There's a bunch in our emails.
Maybe that's it. Yeah. Okay, let me see. Also, subscribe, like, hit the bell. I'll do a commercial while I'm trying to bring this up. For notifications, I think I'm going to do, just because it's an important show stream and I have you guys here, we're going to talk about what happened in Judaism in regards to the canon and the first and second revolts and the aftermath. Very important for understanding canonical lists in their proper historical context. So I'm going to do that Wednesday, and then I'm going to decide whether to do any more Wednesday live streams. Oh, come on. How come I can't bring it up? Where is it? So subscribe, like, hit the bell. I always have trouble bringing.
I just sent you an email.
Yeah.
So it should be. You saw it?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to get that on here. I don't want to bring my email up. I want to share the screen. Sorry, folks. This is very funny. Save image. Downloads. It says it's there. Oh, I know. You know, the problem, James, is the format, WEBP. For some reason, I can't bring those file formats up.
Okay.
That's the problem. That's why it's not showing me. If you can maybe make it into a JPEG or a PNG.
Let me see.
Step Brothers. Oh, this is the William Farrell one. I think that's the one I saw. Or I could probably do that. The thing is, I don't want people to fall asleep while they're waiting for me to get that. Let's see. Can I save it as something else? Folks, talk among yourselves. Convert to PDF. Let's try that. So next chill stream, like I said, Wednesday, 3:30 a.m. God willing, I'll be back, and we'll. Oh shoot! Yeah, I'm. No, darn it! I'm having troubles. I need to close the stream down too. I got to get running. Darn it. Well, guys, I'll tell you what. Wednesday, I will fix James. Okay, did I just do something? Yeah. Okay. I promise you, Wednesday I'll have some thumbnails for you. I'll get the formats done because I actually got to close this live stream and get going. So again, please subscribe, like, hit the bell. James, I got to run. Sorry, my friend. I know you're working on trying.
No, it's fine, man. I converted them for you though, so I'll shoot you the email.
Awesome.
So you can show them next time.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, folks. But anyway, thank you so much for coming on. I truly appreciate it. Thank you for the gift subscription or gift memberships. And till Wednesday, God willing, take care. Bye-bye.
God bless.
Now let's see if I can end it with, there we go. Okay.